All right, hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of GatesAir's Connect's Virtual Events Webinar Series. Today's webinar, Next Generation Radio Transmission Systems, is presented to you by GatesAir's VP and General Manager for the Radio Products Group, Ted Lantz. And it's going to be the second in a series of webinars and online events that we'll be hosting over the next 2 months. So get ready for some great content because we are only getting started. So before we begin this presentation, we're going to take a quick 3-minute break to allow everybody a chance to join into this webinar, this Microsoft Teams live events webinar we're doing here. So please sit back and relax, and we will see you in 3 minutes. All right, hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the GatesAir Connect Virtual Events Webinar Series. This is Keith Adams, Global Marketing Communications Manager for GatesAir, and I want to thank you all for attending today and spending some time with us here on this Good Friday in most of the region. Let's see, with a really large number of major industry events around the world being canceled or seriously postponed, we here at GatesAir want to bring to you a massive amount of streaming interactive content over these next few months that we think you'll like. And though it's not the same as seeing everybody that we want to see in person, we do hope that we can get some great information into your hands nonetheless through these virtual events. So in today's webinar, which is Next Generation Radio Transmission Systems, we have the VP and General Manager of GatesAir's Radio Product Group, Ted Lantz, who will tell us all about new products and features for radio content delivery. He's going to cover all kinds of power levels, advances in high efficiency transmission, of course, and how we are handling some really important solutions for the most popular digital radio standards out there, whether DAB, DRM, CDDB, whatever. We want to have you covered, and we have some great things to talk about today. As always, afterwards we're going to have a question and answer session at the end of this presentation, and we encourage you to type in any questions that you might have in the Microsoft Teams Q&A panel. I'm going to send an announcement for those of you who've never seen this panel before. There is my little announcement on how to put in some questions there. So we'll do these in a first come, first served manner. So feel free to enter them in as soon as you think of them. So let's see, Ted, if you can share your slide and actually unmute, that would be ideal. And I see the muting is good. The unmuting is good.
Mm-hmm. And you should have the screen.
Hopefully shortly. I don't see it yet. We do appreciate your patience there, out there in what they used to call TV land, but I guess you want to call it internet land now. I still don't see it.
Okay, good man. Sec here. Do you still don't have it?
Still don't have it.
Well, we just tried this.
It'll definitely show up soon. I can feel it. Can definitely feel it. There we go. So I see PowerPoint. There we are. We're good.
Okay.
So without further ado, Ted, take it away.
Oh, thank you. So as Keith said, we're going to spend a little bit of time going through some new products that we had planned, that we've introduced, and some planned to introduce this year through some of the different events that we usually support and do. So we'll take the time to go through some of that first, and then we'll discuss some of our other products that we have that we would normally be displaying and showing at the shows, and then in the end we'll take any questions that you may have. So to give you guys all an idea from a radio standpoint, what we support, what we do, our product offerings, they're very vast. So in FM, we support everything from 50 watts up to 80 kilowatts, and we do products in both air-cooled and liquid-cooled. So you see our low power and air, and then as we go from high power, we provide products in both air and liquid. And the same way in DAB, it kind of follows the same format where we have very compact low power units in 80 and 150 watt, and then in air cool we go from 300 watts up to 13.5 kilowatts, and in liquid from 3.5 kilowatts up to 45 kilowatts. So very wide array, a lot of features and functionalities within them, but pretty much a solution for any type of application that a station or a broadcaster may have. So kind of moving forward with some new products that we've introduced in this year and had planned to show at this year's NAB is one of the first ones is the IP Link 100E. So that's basically integrating an IP link into the fax exciters or low power transmitters, and also the high power, since it's in the exciter itself. So what does that provide you? From a broadcaster standpoint, it's again takes one of our option slots and allows you to have direct IP connectivity, removing another box and have it integrated into the system. Provides all the features and functionalities that you would have seen in the IP link itself, with the reliable transport stream, which is one of the highest and biggest features and functionality that is provided with like an IP solution that we're providing in the transport stream. That's probably one of the things we do different than most. There are quite a number of products out there, but there's very few products that offer the reliability and the robustness to deliver this audio. As you can see, it has the same thing with the three IP interfaces, one for the management hub, so everything's isolated so that you don't end up with traffic and collisions within the audio and the management ports themselves, and two WAN connections. And then you do have the GPIO and serial support also. The other thing that it allows you the support for is to have backup audio. So it has failover mechanisms. The exciters themselves do too, and now we just add even another layer of depth within the ability to have backup. So, you know, you could lose a input or a stream, and then you can have failover to the exciter or have failover within the IP link 100E itself, whether that be off the USB drive or do streaming. Lots of flexibility in the way that we can handle backup failover streams. The other features that it provides is the time diversity to prevent the burst of packet losses. And then kind of moving forward here, we also support the dynamic stream splicing. So with that, that ends up giving you a lot of robustness in your reliability to transport the stream. So besides the time diversity that we provide, we can also provide multiple streams through multiple networks. So if you end up with one stream that has a problem or delay within that stream, it will revert to the backup stream, and it basically does it in a hitless way so that you don't notice any type of a problem within the source itself. And then along with that, as I was saying earlier, you also do have the failover. So lots of reliability, robustness, and now we've taken the strength that is in that IP link and we've moved it and integrated it into the exciter itself. Then this year, rounding out and kind of as we continue always to develop and move our product portfolio forward, we kind of filled a gap this year also with one. So before we always had the 10 kilowatt and the 20 kilowatt, 30 and 40, kind of had a gap in between there with the 15. And so this year we introduced the 15 kilowatt transmitter. It is built off the same platform as the FAC series itself, but it is a true 15 kilowatt. It's not a 20 kilowatt that's powered down or software limited to be at 15. So you truly get very good efficiency with it, and you have the same redundancy and functionality that you would see in all our transmitters. With the 15, it's offered in both a analog version and the digital. So it supports both any of the standards. Very high in efficiency, which you see really through all our products. That's the initiative that, you know, we started many years ago and we continue to do every year. So every time that we're looking to advance our products, we're looking for higher power density and smaller footprint and the highest efficiency to benefit the broadcaster. So this particular transmitter gets in FM analog 72% or better. Very high efficiency when you look at running digital compared to, you know, traditionally what we were able to get in some of our older series like the Z series and other transmitters. So, you know, we've improved on efficiency by over 10 to 12% when you look at this in a solid state. And, you know, it also is pretty big in solid state, or it's very big in solid state. Tubes, you can, you know, tend to tune those to get your best efficiency. But with solid state, you usually have a wideband amplifier and you're trying to get the maximum efficiency across the whole band, not without any tuning. And so we've done a very good job of increasing efficiencies over the year for the broadcaster and to lower their power bills. And then also with the redundancy, as I kind of spoke a little bit earlier, we offer the hot pluggable power supplies, as well as the power amplifiers, have complete backup control of the hardware of the controller itself. So you have a software controller. If that software controller were to fail, you have complete backup in the hardware controller, and you can stay at full power, and we monitor everything through it, which is again pretty unique in the operation. Traditionally, if you have to go to a backup, you usually have to go from a controller standpoint. A lot of times you don't monitor everything, and so you go to maybe a quarter power or a half power, depending on what your reject loads are and how much monitoring you're looking and all the different things you would be looking at. Where this one, we made it fully controllable all the way through for full power. And we have a one-to-one relationship in the power supplies and the PAs. So very redundant, variable speed fans to again help in the efficiency, and we monitor the temperature of the transmitter and the FETs, and we move those fans up and down depending on whether they need more cooling or not. This gives you an idea on the inside of it, so it just kind of recognizes all the things that we spoke about. In this particular transmitter, in this 15 kilowatt, we do not use an IPA. We do in some of our others, but we do not in this. We use a 300 watt, one of our 300 watt exciter amp transmitters to drive it. And you can see that we can do that as a dual redundant. So you have full redundancy within the system. And then the PAs and the power supplies, as you can see over on the right, are one-to-one and fully redundant and modular and hot pluggable. Then another thing that we've made some advances on, we've always done synchronous boosters, but we've always done them in the analog world, and we've done some HD in the digital. With that, we've enhanced upon some of our digital offerings and what we can do, and making them more robust and more reliable. And so we've made enhancements in the software, and that's available in our next release. With that, we've done, from a digital standpoint, we do precise locking or timing using the ALFN frame for synchronizing the digital carriers. We are able to set up the target delays, as well as you use the IP links with its synchrocasting, and between the two, you end up with very precise, perfectly aligned analog and digital delay across your SFN network. And we've added a lot more diagnostics, so we can look at a lot more information on the timing, whether it's the E to X to the LFN timing, where we start the timing, as well as we have diagnostics underneath that shows any packet loss, any delays in packets, and most any of the delays are handled through the IP link, since everything's dynamic in its adjustment and being able to handle keeping everything synchronized. But if something gets out of whack or out of line, or when you're first setting it up, we provide a lot of diagnostics, so it's not much of a guessing game anymore like it has been in the past. And so we can very precisely and accurately sync up your SFN and keep it aligned at all times. So that's a software feature. Within the software, we also did, there's other things, but one of the other things that we have done is expanded the MIBs. So we extended all the functionality within the SNMP to have full control and access to everything, where before we had, we didn't always show all the audio inputs and all the active inputs. We've expanded it to anything you really see on the web page. You have control over the SNMP also. So moving forward, now we're going to take a look at our air-cooled product offerings, and we'll start with the low power. So that is something that, at any show or any type of event, we're usually showing. And within those, we go from, this gives you the lineup, it goes from 50 watts up to 3.5 kilowatts. In the 50 and the 150, it's in a 2RU rack unit, so it's very compact. Same way with the 300, 500, and 1K. Moves up to 3 RU, and then in the 2, 3, and 3.5, we're in a 4 RU. And really, in those, it's the differences become the number of pallets, which are very serviceable. They're not hot pluggable in these, but they're very serviceable. They're modular within the unit itself when you take off the top, and then they are screwed in and can be pulled out. They're very high in efficiency for low power transmitters, and they do offer you hot pluggable power supplies as well as the very variable speed fans to help you with your efficiency. So if we kind of take a look at it, how you get access to it. So you have everything on the front panel as far as status control, on, off, your remote controls, your local and remote mode, the standard functionality. You can do everything through the LCD display as far as looking at the parameters, doing the setup, or you can do it through the GUI. You have an Ethernet port right on the front, so you can connect your computer up to that and have full access and do all the setup, or you can go through the menu itself, either way. But as we go through that, the front panel can be removed, and then you see the hot pluggable power supply, which is on the left in the low power. So in the 300 and the 500, that would use a single supply. So it's not redundancy in nature in that one, but they are hot pluggable. As we move up in power, then in our 3 and 3.5, which are showing here, you can see we have multiple power supplies, and so you have redundancy at that level as you move up in power. And you would have proportional fallback should you have an issue or you need to pull one out and put another one in. I will say they're very reliable, so it's not something that's common, but you do have a peace of mind that you do have redundancy and some modularity built within a very compact and small unit. There's a lot of different options. We talked about a new one that we offered just earlier with adding the IP link into the system. We also have the Orband 5500 processor as an option that fits into one of the expansion slots. Internal GPS for the SFN applications. So with that, it offers a lot of flexibility. Not only do you have an integrated GPS receiver, so it's a lot less expensive than getting a big unit that is quite a bit more expensive. It's very accurate, uses one of the higher end receivers in it. But it also allows you then to use the exciter to be able to be the drive for your other devices. You can use it either way. We have programmable inputs for your 10 megahertz and your 1 pulse per second. So those can either take them as inputs, or if you're using our GPS receiver, then you can use those as outputs and have those drive other devices. And then we support any of the digital standards. So Keith had mentioned that at the very beginning, kind of as an introduction to a lot of the things we're talking about. With that, we support HD, DRM Plus, and CDR. What you're looking at there is the XGen card that supports those, and that's a plug-in card within the system itself. Any one of all our transmitters are upgradable, so you can buy them as an analog transmitter today. And if you look to do digital of any one of the standards in the future, then those are upgradable for that. And on the screens, what you kind of see is on the upper side, on the upper is a digital signal. So we provide a spectrum analysis of your signal, so you can always see if you're in mask and within regulation. And it's very accurate, just like a spectrum analyzer. So that's what you're seeing in the front, as well as you can go in and access anything within the system itself. And then over on the right are some of the examples of the screens that you get with the Orband 5500 processor option. That particular, it gives you everything that you would get with an Orband, brings it to the screen. So all your presets, anything that would be a preset within the hardware device that would be external, is provided within the internal box card that we put into the system itself. What's kind of unique about all our exciters is the amount of redundancy and the number of inputs and outputs that we provide within the system itself. So we have multiple inputs. We have dual AES, your analog left and right, dual composite, dual AES over or MPX over AES 192, and then your standard SCA inputs also. With those, it's very flexible in how you can set those up, and that's some of the menus that you're seeing of how you can set up your input multiplexer, as well as the how you want to set up your timing. So if you want to have an AES, if you have, for example, an AES as your main and an AES as your backup, that's supported because of the dual inputs. Or you can have a main AES and a backup composite, or vice versa. Within that, we also then can monitor those inputs, and you can see over on the right hand side where we can set up what you want to have. So what the level would be before it looks to do a switch over, how long that level needs to be gone before it does a switch over, and it can go one way or it can be bidirectional. So my point there is some stations and some systems like to have it where, hey, you know, we have our audio path has failed, we want to move over to our backup. It moves to the backup, and we manually want to stay there because we want to make sure that whatever we've done is we fix it first before we go back to the main. So it has that flexibility. Or if you want to have it where it can go from the main to the backup, and when the main comes back after a certain amount of time, it sees level, and you have it set up for the amount of time it needs to have that level before you switch back, so it's not bouncing back and forth, then it can automatically go back to your main also. So very flexible, very versatile in its functionality and what it can do. And you can also see there's some BNCs in there that we talked about earlier that are for your timing, and that allows you to have to be programmable for an input or an output as far as a 1 pulse per second and the 10 megahertz. In addition, there's an external RF input. So with this, we can also support, particularly when you look at the 300 up to the 3.5. If you want to have dual drive and have an external exciter feeding it, then it supports dual drive within these two. So you have complete redundancy within the system itself. We use for our, pretty much anymore, you really need to have is a web GUI. We support that. We do that on HTML5. So fully supported, very efficient in its operation and being able to get the information back and forth between your local site and your remote site. Everything is fully accessible through the remote GUI. So on your home page, you have the major building blocks of your exciter, your power amp, your power supplies, and your output. If anything would to have an error, not only would you get the status over on the right hand where the LEDs are, but the screen would turn either yellow or red, depending on what piece of that power block and what that failure mode may be. We show you what mode of operation you're in, as well as your modulation. So everything is accessible. If you should have a failure or you want to go look at something, say you want to see if your PAs are balanced and if the currents and the voltages are correct, you just hit the power amp, and then that takes you into metering and takes you into various levels underneath the unit itself, giving you the reading of every amplifier that's within the system. Same way with the exciter and the IPA. Everything just scales down or moves through the menus as you start to drill into the different parameters. So that's our FACS series. Moving from the FACS series, we have another very full-featured LX series. Within it, it goes from 100 watts to 1 kilowatts. They're all the same RU. They're in a 2 RU chassis. Basically, the thing that changes in them is the power supply, the number of power supplies, and the amplifier itself. So the 100 would use a smaller amp than the 3 and 6, and then the same when you go from the 3 and 6 to 1 kilowatt. Otherwise, they look very similar in functionality. And then the 100, 300, and 600 come with a single power supply, but are offered for a redundant. So as an option, if you want to have a redundant power supply, there's a slot for that, and you can plug in a second power supply for redundancy within those boxes. The LX1000 comes standard with 2 power supplies. Within those, we already talked about the power supplies, but some of the other key features within this box itself is the digital multiband audio processor. That's standard within the box itself. The dynamic RDS that was offered and put in the release 2 of the software. It does support MPX over AES. It is a direct-to-carrier, not an analog modulator, but a digital modulator. Full support for SNMP, email notification, and then again the web GUI, which we'll take a look at, I think, next year. So a little bit different looking than our other, but certainly provides you all the access of logging, remote access on-off, changing inputs, full status control within the system itself. So moving forward, we now move to our high power, and we'll take a look at both our product offerings in air-cooled as well as liquid. We offer a full range in the air-cooled from 5 kilowatts up to 80 kilowatts. So on the left, you have the 5, 7.5, and 10. We'll take a little bit of a look at the 7.5. It again was what we introduced last year to fill out the product line. Then we just talked about the 15, 20, your 30 kilowatt and a 40 kilowatt, and then up to 60 and 80, where we combined in the 60 we combined 2 30s, and in the 80 we combined 2 40s for your high power solutions. The other thing in like what we have customers do, like in the 10 kilowatt, for example, the 5, 7.5, 10. And like a 30, because a 30 would be without a PA, but there's also a lot of space up above. Within those, we have some some customers that actually take those and put a second transmitter in. We've had people that, customers that buy a 30, and they might have a 3 kilowatt lower power transmitter, and they'll put that in the same space or in the available space within the unit to combine and consolidate within their facility. So, everything's redundant, everything's just separate from it as far as AC, RF, and everything. So you don't have any worries about problems there, but it does give you a lot of access within the racks. And that's what a lot of people do within the 10s. They may put 2 10s in a rack, or they may put a 10 and a 3.5 or a 3. So there's a lot of flexibility besides what you just see within the systems themselves. There's a lot of flexibility for what we can do for customized type or special projects or type of systems. The transmitters carry the same theme as that we've been talking about in very high efficiency, depending on the units and the power and the model. You have 72 to 75% overall efficiency AC to RF. Like in our 10 kilowatt XP, it gets up to 75%, our 5 kilowatts somewhere around 75%. As in 30s, they're closer to 32 or 72 in analog, because you do have a little bit of more combiner losses within that. We offer a very small footprint. I think as you've seen up there, the amount of power we get in a very small footprint is pretty surprising and pretty small compared to any of the different units that are on the market. Again, full redundancy. So we do have a lot of redundancy within it. We don't usually take and make one module for 5 kilowatts or put 2 modules in for 10. We have 7 in our 10 kilowatt in one of our models, and we have 5 in the other. So very robust. Should you lose a module, we still put a lot of power out the antenna. In some cases, like in the 10 with the 7 modules, you wouldn't probably even, at 10 kilowatts, you wouldn't even see a change in power. You know, if you lost 2, you would have some reduction within power. And as we were talking about how we try to complete and continue with our development, we always have projects going on every year. Last year we introduced a 7.5, so that fit between the 5 and the 10. And it really has the same functionality, just fewer modules as what the 15 was. And then in the high power, again, full IP connectivity, SNMP control, and it supports any smart device, tablet, smartphone, Apple. So any device can be used to access the web remotes through your phone, through your PC, tablet, whatever, and full SNMP control. And we move to the FLX. We'll really just kind of look at it has the same, it came off of the FACS. So when we went to liquid cool, we built it off the FACS with its reliability and its functionality. We just went through and we did go with, at that time when we put this into our product portfolio, there were higher power devices. So we went with those to get the higher output powers. A lot of these are used for digital, just because of the efficiency that you see in this and lowering of your HVAC when you look at them. So that's where most of ours are at. We do some in analog in certain climate areas, but a lot of them are done for digital. And within those, we built off the FACS, but we moved it to liquid cool and we went to a higher power device. And this gives you an idea. So very much the same look and feel as far as the one-to-one redundancy in the power supplies and the PAs. Power supplies are the same power supplies that we use in the air-cooled. Same controller and the redundancy within it. But you kind of see, you do see at the bottom right of the screen, the amplifier itself. So different amplifier with a cold plate on it. And then it has the liquid cooled connections, the valves, to support the liquid cooling through the system itself. And we'll kind of take a look here. So this is kind of an exploded view. If I were to pull one of the modules, they are hot pluggable. You pull one of the modules out, you can see up into the PA itself, and within that, it has self-sealing fluid connections. So everything, when you pull it out, nothing, no liquid goes squirting anywhere. It self-seals, and everything. You have a drip plate. You might have to clean the drip plate off, but that's it. Use a very high efficiency pump system. We built that really off our TV that's been using liquid cooled for years. So it's very small in size. Dual pumps, as you can see over on the right hand side. So we do run those in parallel and not in series. So they are redundant, so you can switch over between them. If you were to have a problem with one of the pumps, you can switch out the pump while on air, while it's still on the air. We do have valves for being able to shut off one side and be able to repair or make a change to the pump while you're still on the air. Very low maintenance, very quiet in operation, and so that's the pump system itself. And then we have various heat exchangers depending on the power of the system itself. So in the 20 kilowatt and below, we use a 20 kilowatt heat exchanger. As you go up in power, in the 30s and the 40s and above, then you would have a 50 kilowatt heat exchanger. The heat exchangers can be laid down horizontal, or can be stood up horizontal, or they can lay down and be vertical. Either way, however you would want those to set, depending on where you're at in a building or whether you would need to be next to a building. Dual fans, they're variable speed fans, and again, we provide them that way so that we can provide the maximum efficiency and the most redundancy within the system. So that's the FM product line. So that's where we started. In the FM, we went from the low power to high power, the different options that we have available, both in air and liquid as an overview. Now we kind of move to the DAB, the VAXT series. So we have the ultra compact, which is comes in 1, 2, and 3 RU models from 80 watts up to 750 watts. So depending on power you're looking at, we have 80, 150, 300, 450, and 500, 750 in the ultra compact. Very full featured. Take a look at kind of the front and the rear view. So it has a LCD touchscreen on the front panel to give you full access and for setup and functionality, as well as you have the Ethernet port, just like what we were showing in the FM products, where you can do the setup, your input slots, whether they be for ETI or EDI, as well as with those you have redundancy, so you can have 2 EDI and 2 ETI, or you can have full ETI, but they do have redundant in functionality with seamless switchover. You see the various inputs on the back as far as your 10 and your 1 pulse per second, your GPS input. So the GPS receiver is an option depending on what GPS receiver you need. Power supply and your amplifiers itself, as well as the monitoring and the feedback for the pre-correction. Some of the key features within the units themselves are they are fully broadband, so they go across the whole band. For the band 3 for 170 to 240. They are very high in efficiency, somewhere around 46, and some frequencies a little more, in overall efficiency with a 32 to 33 dB MER. So very high efficient and provide very good sensitivity to the MER itself. And as I mentioned earlier, we support all the different inputs, whether it be EDI or ETI. Then moving from the ultra compact, we go to the 1 power series. Those come in 2 RU with 1 RU exciter and 3 RU with a 1 RU exciter from 300 watts to 1.2 kilowatts. Then you have 3.5. If you look at the 1.5 to 2 kilowatts, it goes to a 3.5 RU amplifier. And then those move into racks, 36-inch racks, to take you up in further in power, up to 13.5 kilowatts basically in air cooled. So lots of pretty much anything a person would be looking at, or any type of power a person would be looking at, is offered within the system in a very compact platform. The dual drive is available as an option, and you can see that within the systems that are here. And then we move to liquid cooled. It stays with the same thing with the high efficiency broadband PAs. Again, we're just now putting cold plates in there and actually liquid cooling them. Dual redundant pumps. We have a reserve tank for the coolant. There's a very efficient heat exchanger also that runs off of 24 volts, as well as the heat exchanger can be put in reverse mode to be able to blow all the dust out of it or any type of debris that might have gotten into it or around it as it's been running. So you can self-clean basically itself. These are the power levels within the system. So if it's a 2 PA system, it's 3.5 kilowatts basically, 3.8, and moves up in power depending on the number of PAs that are put within the system. So as you go up to 8 PAs, you're at 15.2 kilowatts. If we take a look at the right, we have redundancy built within the power supplies. So there's 3 power supplies within the system. If one were fail, then you still have 100% output power. If 2 fail, you go to 50%. So lots of redundancy within the system itself for keeping you at maximum power and on air. Another product that's kind of unique is the multi-carrier DAB. It can go in up to 240 watts. It allows you to have 3 channels within the spectrum. Take a look at that. So there's a 150 watt model and a 240, and then those power levels are split between each of the, and you can set them individually between each of the channels. So you can have up to 3 DAB carriers transmitted through the single amplifier. The pre-correction then is provided for the system to give you the best spectrum performance. Very economical for those for different applications. For example, we have used these for tunnels so that we can put in 3 channels within an ensemble through a tunnel very inexpensively. And so this is just really pretty much a summary of what we talked about, that you have output powers up to 240 watts. We have another version that's at a lower power, uses the Doherty broadband amplifier. It supports any of the modulations, whether it be DAB, DAB plus, or TDMB. Up to 3 channels, or you can have 2 channels and they don't have to be adjacent. The correction GPS is optional. Does have hot swappable amplifiers and power supplies, 3 ETI inputs, and you can also have it set up for EDI if you would want. The SNMP and the web GUI. That's so those are an overview of each of the FM and the DAB products, and then within digital, we introduced about 1.5 years ago the FMXi, and so the FMXi probably for this meeting isn't as important, but I will go through it just in case there's people that are looking to go HD. It is the importer and exporter for an HD system. What the exporter itself, what those were always before were separate hardware. So you had an exporter and you had an importer. And the importer itself, it ran off of Windows. It was a PC that ran off of on a Windows platform. What we've now done is taken those into the Gen 4 of the system. We've moved those and combined them, and we made both of them embedded. So we've gotten rid of the Windows operating system. We've integrated everything. You have no boot up times like you have in PC, so there's really no downtime, as well as everything has become simpler and more reliable by the integration of these systems. So the exporter itself always encoded the main channel audio, and then the importer is used to handle the artist experience, being able to put your song and title and album art onto the display. And then it also encodes the HD 2, 3, and 4 channels to give you multiple channels on the same carrier, same frequency. So this is a look at the unit itself. It's now combined into B1, and that's really probably the more preferable way for people to use them when you kind of understand the whole networking and the whole setup as far as integration for the system. But there are some sites that don't have enough bandwidth on their STL to handle the whole payload. So you can have the exporter. They can be as an exporter only and importer. So you can have the exporter at the transmitter site with the importer at the studio and feed everything through in that type of a method. So very flexible in its functionality and what it can do. This is the rear panel of the system itself. So all the timing that is needed or provided within the system is located with the 1 pulse per second in and out and the 44.1 word clock, as well as the 10 meg. Then we have the GPS. Everything's locked in the digital systems. Everything's locked to GPS, just like any of the digital systems that are implemented. We do have 3 different WAN ports, similar to what we were talking about in the IP link. We do that within the FMXi also, where they are separate. And so what that does is give you isolated LAN, so they have much more flexibility and you have much more robustness. So the E2X stream, for example, is very bursty in nature, so it takes up a lot of the network traffic, and then trying to add management traffic or anything else that gets on the network can cause latencies within the system itself. By having these isolated, it gives you a lot more flexibility, and now you don't have as many collisions within the system. The audio ins and outs are all supported through RJ45. That's how we get this really in a very small form factor. Again, if people that are familiar with the older boxes, this is a third the size, if not more, than most of the boxes in the past. And you see your main in and your HD 2, 3, and 4, as well as when you have delay in the monitoring. That's all for different setups within how a system might be set up. You have the ability to have a backup power supply. It just takes a standard 12-volt, 5-amp power supply. On the side you have the brick where you just plug in. If you wanted to have a backup for redundancy, then you just get a second one locally and plug it in, and as long as it meets the amperage and the voltage, then you're set to go. And then the unique feature within the FMXi is having a built-in tuner so that we do the automatic time and audio correction. Within HD, one of the things that happens with it is the way the receivers really work from an HD system standpoint is they pick up the analog signal first. If there is a digital signal, it sees that, then it blends over to the digital signal and provides you the digital. With that, if you don't have perfect time alignment between your analog and your digital, then what you'll get is you'll get little, you'll hear blending errors. You might hear it skip, what will sound like a skip. The user will hear something that will be like a skip because it's not in perfect time alignment. Or you have these little nulls that come across. So without having that, then it's not the best experience for the user. And so we keep everything in perfect time alignment. And now the user experience is much better than what it was in the older systems. And actually, the maintenance is gone now. That was one of the things that everybody always had to go back and adjust their diversity delay. Well, now we take care of that for you. And that is, this is the built-in receiver within the system itself. And so you have your carrier board and you have a very small, tiny receiver that we've integrated into it. And then that allows us for doing the audio and the time alignment. And then also it provides you with confidence monitoring, which you really did never have in the older systems. And you also see then on the right, we provide a histogram of everything. So if there's any problems, that you can go back and look at the history in the logs, and we can see and we can provide better diagnostics to what might be happening within the system itself. This is really pretty much the same thing I just talked about as far as enhancing the user's experience with the automatic time alignment. This is a GUI. We're very feature rich within the GUI. If a person were to see the old ones and look at the new ones, this is 1,000 times better. You can come to the front of it and see everything that's happening right when you go into it. And so over on the left, it tells you whether you have everything synchronized and started. In the past, you didn't know. You had to click through a bunch of different windows. Everything is right on the front panel itself, as well as same theme that we carry throughout all our products, giving you access to anything through the diagram on the front, and then you can drill in to do the setups and monitor the systems itself. We provide you with the monitoring of the signal itself as far as the carry and the levels, so you know if you have any signal issues, as well as the diversity delay. And so it shows you right where your current is and where you're desired, whether it's complete, if it's running, and it will show you when it's making corrections, as well as we keep that in the log within the system. This is being able to set up for your alarms and your thresholds for when you want to have things within the event and to alert you, as well setting up the tuner itself, and it also gives you your signal to noise level, so you know how good your signal is itself. As we talked about some of the real-time monitoring, both from the display as well as in the logs itself. And it tells you it shows you when we're making corrections for any of the audio, as well as corrections within the correlation of the digital to the analog. And there are some little things that we do within the correlation too. You don't want the thing correlating all the time as far as making drastic changes, because now it's always if it makes very quick changes, that's not very good for the listener either. So there's quite a algorithm that we use to give it a very accurate and very precise correlation between the analog and the digital. This shows how you can set up the dynamic time and audio correction. So within DTAC, one of the things that we give you the flexibility to put the delay in the analog or the digital. And there's a lot of different reasons for that. A lot of times you will put it in the digital so that you only have one chain that is doing the delay itself. And so we provide the support for either mode, depending on how somebody wants to set it up. We already spoke about this. The audio status itself. So one of the things, again, that this gives you from diagnostics and troubleshooting standpoint is the ability to go in and look at your signals. And so if you hit the audio status, then it brings you to this screen. And what that allows us to do is to be able to look at both what's supposed to be coming from the automation system to be displayed on the receiver. And now that we have the tuner, we can see what it is displaying itself also. So it's very flexible and helps us a lot in diagnostics, as well as helps the user. That's something you never could know before. You didn't know, was it coming or did it not get there, what it is. And a lot of that is just what the setup is of the automation system to send that data to the unit itself. And so now we can look at that and we can see if the paths have been set up right. If we're not seeing it at the input, we say, well, we must have something wrong in the path of where we're telling the automation to send the data. And you can have remote capture clients too. And so this is a setup for the remote capture clients. Another thing that we provide is the ability to go back in software. So, you can do a software update within this screen. It's very easy, but we maintain the previous 2 software versions. So if there was a bug that got in or something we missed, you can always go back to a previous version within the system. So in summary, the embedded importer exporter, there is no boot up time within the system, which is what you always had in the older ones. You don't have drivers to update for your audio cards. They always used Professional audio cards within the systems themselves. Had to keep up with the drivers. Sometimes the drivers weren't supported. You move to a different operating system or update your operating system. Now you got to go update the driver. So we remove all that. So we make everything much more user friendly and easier. Combine the units into one box. Now we do the automatic time alignment. So remove that from the user. We're watching it all the time and setting that up for you. The artist experience is now built within the system for your album art and display of your logos, which always ran on a separate PC in the past. So the setup in that is much easier. And so we've made everything easier from an engineering and a setup standpoint also. And that is the end. So thank you. And I think now it's if we have any questions, we can go through those.
Cool. Yeah, it's awesome presentation. Again, thank you very much, Ted, for doing this. And I will say we're at the top of the half hour. It is here in the States. It is on the East Coast. It is 11:31 p.m. So we're a little bit over, but we may have some time for a couple of questions if they come in. But before we get to that, here's some quick announcements. If you want to enter questions, if you don't already know, there's a Q&A pane here in the Microsoft Teams live events environment, and we're going to answer them in a first come, first served manner. This webinar's recording will be available at the same link that you used to sign on. It's also going to be available on gatesair.com and on our YouTube channel tomorrow or later today, depending on what time it is in your time zone. For more webinars like this one, please visit gatesair.com/v-events for our virtual events schedule of webinars and online events. In addition, we're going to be adding this webinar to our educational video library at gatesairuniversity.com. If you haven't checked that out, it's our online hub of lessons and webinars about broadcast engineering. Some really neat stuff there. And right now, we currently don't have any questions from the current viewers. I also know we are on a time delay when we record this. There's probably half a minute between when we are talking and when things are happening. But I have to admit there's probably two questions from the earlier session today that that people might find interesting. Hopping back to the beginning of your presentation, when you're talking about the IP Link 100E card, earlier today, Alan Jurison asked the question if it was possible for a Flexiva Compact to have both an IPL 100E card and an HD XGen card as well installed in the same exciter, for those of us listening here who are HD radio aficionados.
Yes, you can have both of those as well as the GPS receiver built within the system.
And briefly, you touched on with the Flexiva LX. Someone had asked earlier if about the SNMP capability for it to connect to a remote control device, and I know that the LX is SNMP compatible, and if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it is full SNMP control, so that if a automated or a remote control, if there's an external remote control that somebody wants to connect to, and they then have access to the MIBs, and so they can set up a remote control to have any look and feel they would want, a remote control system through the MIBs itself, just talking to the MIBs.
So we just got a question in from Mark. He asked, when it comes to single frequency networks, can you talk a little bit about the pros and cons between a fax versus an LX?
you know, they both can handle a single frequency network. The fax itself has you know, really a few more features and a little bit more robustness in its clocking and its timing, and as well as its audio levels. So all the different things that come into a play when doing an SFN and implementing them correctly. I guess I'll say the fax itself has a little more accuracy in how you do that. So if you have a complex type of an SSM with a lot of overlapping zones, the fax provides you with more control over that. But if you have one that's you know, a little less difficult, maybe it's two nodes with not as much overlap. Certainly an LX can be synchronized. It has the GPS. It does have delay that you can set in it. It just doesn't have quite the accuracy that you do within a fax itself from a timing standpoint.
Mm-hmm. Both great products, but for a little bit of sophistication with the fine tuning, the fax edges out a little bit. Mm-hmm. Okay. It seems like there aren't a whole lot of questions coming in at this point. And again, we appreciate everybody's time coming out here. But again, this is a great presentation. And if people wanted to get in touch with you for follow-up on some things, how would they do that?
Right. If you have any questions or have other things that you need information on, you can just email me at tlantz, TLANTZ, at gatesair.com.
Awesome. So when it comes to these webinars, we're going to have a few more as it stands. So we're going to do a couple of months of this and ideally get you some great material. So for those of you listening who are interested in what you're going to listen to on Tuesday, because I know you'll want to come back, we have another very interesting virtual event called Intraplex IP Audio Contribution and Distribution Capabilities. That one will be dual presented by Kara Parikh and Tony Gervasi. They're going to talk about our current updated portfolio of unmatched codecs for robust audio, data, and control delivery. So this is pretty much the exact webinar you want to check out when it comes to IP-based transport at its finest and most cutting edge. So definitely show up for that. To sign up for that one and see our full schedule of virtual events, go to gatesair.com/v-events, and that'll get you right there in line. If you have any topics that you'd like us to go over, please let me know at marketing@gatesair.com. Or you can talk to me with directly email-wise, kadams@gatesair.com. So yeah, if everybody's feeling good about it, I definitely want to thank you again, Ted. Just, you know, this is very cool stuff for people to know. I learn something every time. I'm not kidding.
No problem. Thank you, everyone, for attending the webinar. And if you would have any questions, just let us know and we'll get you some answers.
That's what we do. That's what we do. So yeah, for Ted and the entirety of GatesAir, this is Keith Adams saying, stay safe, stay happy, and hey, let's stay connected. Thank you.
Thank you.